What are you actually fighting for? I don't mean why are you fighting? I mean, what do you actually want? And this is the question I ask every client, whether it's in session or in an intake form. And trust me, a lot of people struggle to answer this. We all know what we don't want. It's pretty easy to know what you don't want, but it can be quite a challenge to know what you do want. I'm Iman Ibrahim. I spent 19 years as a family lawyer in Singapore and in England, and now I'm a mediator and divorce coach. This is a divorce actually, where we talk about what actually helps when you don't need more legal advice or more emotional processing. It's about the decision making, the preparation, the communication, and negotiation frameworks that actually move you forward. So, when I say, what do you actually want? People often know what is available to them legally. I know you are a smart person. You have done your research. If you have listened to me at all ever, you have gone and looked already on the judiciary website to look up your entitlements or what the forms are and what the court's going to look at in your divorce matter. And if you are having a Muslim divorce, you would have already looked at the Sharia court website. And if you haven't, please go and do that. That would help you a lot. I also know that you are great with Google searches, AI, looking at social media, finding things on YouTube to get as much information as possible so that you can make an informed choice. So you have amassed maybe quite a lot of information actually, but it's still very difficult to decide which direction to take. And you probably haven't decided what you actually want. And I'm going to tell you that what is legally available and what you're going to do are completely different questions. I also want to say that a lot of people come into divorce with inherited goals. And what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, if you have seen a lawyer or more than one lawyer, you're still deciding what lawyer to take, you would have received advice about what you're entitled to, the best and worst case scenarios. That's pretty standard. You might have been told, oh, yes, you can even try fighting for this or fighting for more. And you're not really sure. So what you might do next is consult the loving and supportive people in your life, your friends, your family. And they, because they are such loving and supportive people, have told you, you have put up with such a terrible time in this marriage. You deserve more. You deserve everything. You should get everything. That's not always helpful. Let me look around more and find people who have gone through this before, gone through divorce. So you might look at a friend's divorce or someone you know, or even out there on social media where people share about their divorces. You can see that they've achieved XYZ outcome. And maybe there are some similarities in their case to your case. And then that creates a benchmark. You see yourself setting yourself up there to say that you'd like to get XYZ outcome as well. I will say do be wary of that, because sometimes not everything, not all the information on a person's particular case is out there on the internet or even disclosed to you if they're a friend. And there could be nuances which mean you would not achieve XYZ outcome. Instead of absorbing everyone else's idea of what a good outcome is, what's yours? Can you answer that? Because there is a problem when you want to negotiate. If you are negotiating for something you haven't consciously chosen and that you can't evaluate as good or bad because you're not even quite sure what you're evaluating for, what your criteria is. So we're going to get into that, because I don't want you to, unless you want to, be fighting for 18 months about something and not feeling great when you eventually get there, or maybe not even getting an outcome that feels right. Knowing what you're entitled to is not the same as knowing what you want. Entitlement is a legal concept. Your lawyer will tell you that. And what you want or what you need, that is a life concept. It is your life concept, your practical life concept. And what you need / what you want is what drives how you're deploying your legal entitlements, not the other way around. Let me also say, when I sit as a mediator, I can see how hard it is for parties to reach a settlement because they don't really know what they want or need. They haven't prepared that thought process at all. So what they're doing, they're just throwing positions at each other, hoping that one sticks. It doesn't. And mediation is a pretty finite period of time that we have together to get this done. If you miss this window of opportunity to take control of the outcome of your case, you will be handing control over to a third party, the court, to make a decision, and then you have to live with it. So you're like, right, yes, I want to be able to negotiate with my ex, and I want to be able to get somewhere with mediation. I hear you, Iman. Now tell me, how am I going to figure out what I actually want? There are 3 domains you would be optimizing for, and I can assure you that people don't look at all 3. They probably look at 1, maybe 2 of them. On top of that, people are not ranking them or prioritizing them. And I want to say that that matters as well. I have not ranked them in any priority order. I'm just going to dive into the one which is the easiest and most obvious. Domain number 1 is financial security. Yes, I know it feels very obvious, but it is way, way more nuanced than people actually treat it. Financial security is not the same as maximizing the financial outcome in your case. In your personal life circumstances, would it be better for you to have a smaller settlement, but that come more quickly? Or would it be better for you to have a larger settlement fought over 2, 3, 4, or more years? I know, yeah, you're like, okay, I can wait for the larger settlement. I don't mind. Are you sure? Have you really looked into it? Number 1, 2, 3, 4 years of legal costs are for sure going to diminish the larger financial settlement you may have got. On top of that, you have to fight for 2, 3, 4, or more years. That takes mental space, that takes your emotional bandwidth, that even takes just general bandwidth. There is also a risk when you stay in this financial entanglement, this stagnation, if you will, because you haven't got this sorted out. You know, life moves on. Circumstances change, the economy changes, and there might be some real risks if you stay stuck fighting. The question I ask my clients, and you should be asking yourself, is what does financial security mean for your life, yours? Is it about a specific asset or a cash position? What about income stream? What about freedom from debt? Yes, sometimes even freedom from debt is possible, depends what stage of life you're at. These are all different things, and there are different negotiation strategies to deploy for each of them. But the trap you will fall into is conflating financial security with financial victory. We like victory. We want to win. We do not want to lose. The emotional need for not losing is very relational and should not be dressed up as a financial goal. So here is a little test for you. If you could have financial security without the need to win, would you take it? I'll wait. If your answer is no, then that is not a financial goal. That is, I want to win. So I'll leave you with that thought. Dive into your mind and into your life and your documents to look at what financial security actually means to you. And then domain number 2, I'm going to call peace and functionality. I think that we generally have a concept of peace. You know, a lot of people say they would like to have peace. Functionality is up there too. When I talk about functionality, let's look at it as if you have children. Then how long is your co-parenting relationship going to go on for? Here is a hot take. How you fight is going to determine how you land. What I'm saying is, if you are going into full war, battle, warrior mode, full on adversarial, how do you think that's going to impact your co-parenting relationship? Not well. Now, I'm not at all saying lie down and let yourself be steamrolled. Of course, you should advocate for yourself, but there should be intentionality in the level and type of conflict you choose. So here is a question to you. If you could design your relationship with your ex for 5 years from now, the realistic and functional version, especially where you have to co-parent, what does that look like? Because that picture will also inform you how you negotiate now. And yes, I know you probably want to stab them now, but we have to think a little bit bigger than that. The divorce proceedings are never going to be the way to do that. And I will also say this to you. You are showing your children, if you have them, how adults handle conflict. And they will learn from that, and it will impact their lives too. So do remember that you are modeling for them, and that should also inform you how you're going to negotiate through this. Domain 3. This is about time, autonomy, and your new life. This isn't talked about enough. Actually, the people who care about it more are the people who have been in the divorce process for longer, because what they do is they reach a point where they want this over much more than they want to have a good outcome. And that's also a completely legitimate preference. Some people are taken to task over it. Their friends might be like, why didn't you fight harder? They keep then fighting battles that they would have actually conceded and running up costs against goals that maybe don't matter anymore. When I ask you what you actually want, what I'm also asking you or asking one of my clients, or what you're asking yourself, what does your life actually look like on the other side of this? And when you do this, I want you to be very specific. Where are you living? What is your working life like? What is your relationship to the children's daily lives? And yes, there will be a difference where one parent may have the children living with them and the other sees them at other times because they aren't living with them. So then it becomes a lot more about what do you need from this settlement to build that life. A very, very important distinction to make here is what do you actually need to start over versus what would be ideal. I can tell you that ideal is a very expensive thing to pursue in a divorce. But what I need to start over is much more achievable in negotiations. And remember also that it isn't just you starting over. There are two people in the divorce. They are both starting over, and they are starting over from what is available in the resources that are existing at that time in the divorce. And speaking of time, time is also a resource. And every month your divorce goes on for has a cost in your bandwidth and in your focus and in the delayed start of the new phase of your life. A lot of us, as I'm going to say myself too, we're super high functioning people. We can do a lot. We can multitask amazingly. We think that we can manage everything because we're good at it. So actually high functioning people can sometimes be my most difficult clients to have because it's hard for them to see that you have to let go of some things in order to have other things flourish. This cost of pursuing all of the things, that also too has its own outcomes. Okay, so I have given you 3 domains that you will want to think about. And they all feel important. So now we need to prioritize them. Again, it sounds super simple, but can be very difficult to practice. Here is your exercise. Grab your pen and paper. No, this is not just me talking at you or an entertaining video for you to watch. You are going to have to do some work now. Rank your 3 domains in order of priority. And within each domain, identify 2 or 3 specific things that are an acceptable outcome to you. Now, why ranking can be hard is that you have to think about not getting everything. A lot of us operate on the assumption that if you have a good enough lawyer, you can get everything, all the money, all the peace, and all the time. If I ask you to rank it, you are going to be confronted with trade-offs, and it's better you do that now before the process of divorce forces you to, because then you'll feel like you're losing. So instead, I'm going to let you think of it in a different way. It is designing. And knowing your priorities means that you spend on things that matter to you and don't spend on things that don't. So I'm going to walk you through specific trade-offs, and you can think about these. Would you take less money for a faster resolution? If that's a yes, it means that time and autonomy ranks more to you than financial optimization. And tactically then, it lets you know that you probably shouldn't be in a full-on warrior adversarial litigation mode. Would you accept a less favorable asset split to preserve, wait for it, the co-parenting relationship? If that's a yes, then your functional relationship is more important and it ranks above the financial outcome. And again, this is an indicator to you of what you can escalate and what you can concede. Would you take financial risk to get out faster? Would you accept ongoing entanglement to get more? These are the real trade-offs that people face, and the answers depend on what you are optimizing for. If the settlement was slightly less than you're entitled to, but resolved in 3 months instead of 18 months, would you take it? And I am saying the months because it does matter. You need to know where the lines are drawn. There are 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. All of these you should be thinking about because you will feel certain when you know. Next, if you could guarantee a functioning, low conflict co-parenting, but it meant letting go of a particular financial position, would you let it go? Again, there is no right or wrong answer here. It is just me letting you know, again, that if you are going to fight hard in the litigation that has a real and meaningful impact on your co-parenting relationship, and in turn, that does also have an impact on the kids. So weigh up what that means to you. Now, here's a really good one. If you could have the outcome you actually want, the financial security and the functional life, but your ex, who had done a lot of wrong things to you, they're never going to acknowledge they were wrong. Is that enough for you? I'll wait for your answer. This last question is really a big one. If the answer is no, which means you need them to be wrong, and that's your requirement, then you need to be aware that this acknowledgement is higher in your priorities than maybe you realized. And I'm going to say no shame in that, okay? Sometimes we just want that. But you need to be aware of it and you need to have it in your mind, because be aware that that is driving the decisions you make. Now, maybe some thoughts have surfaced for you in this process. And what you're now thinking about is, how do I actually know what is a non-negotiable versus what is something I'm just holding on to? Great. Still got your pen and paper? You are now going to write out 2 columns. Okay, so it's 2 columns here. This column is for your non-negotiables, and this column is for your tradable items. Now, remember the 3 domains that we've just identified. You can put into each column what falls in that column. Non-negotiables are things that your life genuinely requires. I think you should know how to make the difference between needs and wants. This is really the financial floor that you cannot go below. This might also mean the custody arrangement or the care and control arrangements that actually work for your life. And I mean work for your life. I do not mean what feels fair. It might also mean looking around at specific assets which you feel are essential. On the other side of that, on our column on this side, are the tradable items, namely things you'd ideally like, but you could release and let go of, things that would be nice, but aren't essential. The main problem that I see as a mediator is that people have not separated their non-negotiables and their tradable items. So they negotiate as if everything is a non-negotiable. If everything is non-negotiable and there is nothing to trade, there is no negotiation. It's just a standoff until someone's lawyer's bill forces some kind of function into this. So why does this clarity matter strategically? What has it got to do with your negotiation, you're asking? Knowing what you want isn't just psychologically useful, it's actually legally and tactically protective. Clarity makes you harder to manipulate, believe it or not, because divorce can be a longer process and longer than you think. At some point, you might feel a little shaky. So that's when emotional tactics might work through. And if you haven't really thought about your wants, your needs, it will surface problems for you. I have seen this happen before when I was practicing as a lawyer, where parties start giving away things that they actually didn't want to give away, but because of the pressure of the circumstances, felt that they had to concede it. Everyone got to a settlement and a consent order, but a week later, the regrets are immense and it can't be undone. What we're trying to do is avoid these panic concessions. If you know what you want and why you want it, you will not be affected by it. You will have a map instead. Any provocation is just noise against this map or this plan that you have. Secondly, knowing what you want actually makes your lawyer more effective. A lawyer who knows their client's actual priorities can fully advise on the strategy and tactics. And it's not just about, can I win this argument? It is winning this argument worth the cost? And does it move the client towards what they actually need? One of the most expensive dynamics in divorce is the lawyer fighting battles that the client hasn't realized they want. What I mean is, the client has never really said, oh, this is what I'm trying to achieve. Here's what I'm willing to spend. Here's what I'm willing to trade. So a lawyer defaults to their natural mode, which is fighting for everything available, because that is their job in the absence of other instructions. And clients don't realize sometimes that they can actually give other instructions. So here is a fun little story. I can mediate for people in the absence of their lawyers, which means the people attend my mediations without their lawyers. That's up to them, and if they're comfortable with it, they can. Sometimes it actually helps move things along better. And one of my parties has once said to me that my lawyer has given me this advice, but I think I'm going to ignore it because actually I am willing to accept this smaller amount if this can be over today. And as a responsible mediator, of course, I reality tested it with them to make sure that they wouldn't regret it later, because nothing worse than, again, having a consent order having to be undone. They were happy with it and they said they would let their lawyer know later. And I love that for them. I really love that they knew what their bottom line was, that they knew what they could function. And we achieved so much. Okay, so what are you going to do with all this information that you've downloaded from me now? Before your next lawyer meeting, before your mediation session, or even before a difficult conversation you might need to have with your ex, sit down and answer the ranking question. Your financial security, your functional continuity, your time and autonomy. What is first? And what are you actually willing to trade and not willing to trade, right? Remember the two columns, non-negotiables, trade-offs. That is your strategy, and that's all. Getting clear on what you want isn't the end of the process, but it's the beginning. It's the beginning of being actually able to use the mediation and divorce process. And for every professional you engage and the decisions that you need to make, and even the communications that you need to send, will be so much sharper once you have done this work. This is actually a lot harder than it sounds. And not because that doing it is complicated, but it requires you to do a lot of self-reflection and digging deep to see what you're going to admit to yourself. And in a conflict, it can feel fundamentally unfair because maybe the other person is not even bothering to do this exercise, in which case, don't you think you should be sneakily sending them my video? Accepting trade-offs, I know, it can feel like losing before you've even started. I want you to know that it's not really that you're accepting less. It's designing well within real life constraints. And that's what it means to divorce intentionally in practice. In the next episode, we are going to go a layer deeper. Yes, there is even a deeper layer than this, because once you know what you want, there is often a gap between the question you are asking and the question you actually need answered. And you need to close that gap. If not, good legal advice is going to keep sliding off it. If this was useful, if you have questions, if you need clarification on anything, please get in touch with me at divorceatelier.com. I'm Iman Ibrahim, and this is Divorce Actually.